ICQ podcast episode number 399, Hamzilla 2023. Well, hello and welcome fellow amateur radio enthusiasts to this, our 399th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported by ICQ 400 Club member Winston Lawrence, KD2 Whiskey Lima Lima, and also Michael Rosenberg, N9 Yankee Bravo, Gary Bridges, Whiskey Alpha Zero Victor Mike Victor, and of course our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode we join Martin M1MRB, Dan, Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform, Caryn, Kilo Delta 2 Golf Uniform Tango, and Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6 BOY, rounds up the news in brief. And this episode's feature is looking back on Hamzilla 2023, and we have interviews with CCOM regarding their new 23 SEMS antenna, and an update from SDR Play regarding SDR Connect. Well, as always, it's your very kind donations that keep us running, and it's great when you show the value you get from the show by helping us out with our running costs. So our ICQ Podcast 400 Club member Winston Lawrence, KD2 Whiskey Lima Lima, is the first person we'd like to thank. You can still take part in this special donation level just by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate and saying get yourself mentioned as a special donor for our upcoming 400 episode in the next episode. Now we also got some one-off donations. Michael Rosenberg, November 9 Yankee Bravo, says thank you for all you do from Mike, so thanks a lot Mike for doing it for us. And Gary Bridges, Whiskey Alpha Zero Victor Mike Victor, also sent us off a one-off donor as well, so thank you very much guys for doing that. Now, you can do what, I say, Winston, Mike, Gary, and all the monthly subscription donors do by showing your value for what we do here on the ICQ podcast. It's a very simple logic. Think of what enjoyment and entertainment and knowledge you got from our show today. Turn that into a monetary amount, and then visit icqpodcast.com/donate, where you can help us out in that wonderful way. And of course, you get a mention on the show to let everybody know you're doing your bit about keeping us on the air and doing what we do. Right, well now we're going to join Martin, Dan, Caryn and Edmund to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including ways to safeguard vital repeaters and bringing open source HF digital voice into the mainstream. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 399 of the ICQ News podcast, and tonight's News Roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Dan Romanchik KB6NU. Hi, Dan.
Hello, everybody.
I've also got Caryn Eve Murray, KD2GUT. Getting your call sign right this time, Caryn. Haven't got it wrong for a long time, have I?
No, but that's okay. You're inspiring me to go for that other call. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hi, Caryn. And last but not least, we have Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, and Ed Durant, DD5LP. He's got the flu. He says it's not COVID. It's definitely the flu. But he says he's feeling horrible. So he's not going to join us tonight. But we all wish him that he gets well fairly soon. I'm back with us for another one. Now, our first news story. The title says, echoes of BBC's first broadcast in Scotland 100 years ago is heard around the world from the centenary event at the Pacific Quay. So the BBC got together with some of their engineers and some amateurs and rebroadcasted, did a special event. Edmund, you're big into special events. Did you do anything on this one?
I am, and unfortunately I didn't manage to work them, but looking at the cluster, it looks like they had contacts pretty much everywhere from 80 metres to 10 metres all across Europe, and it looks like they had a very successful operation. The only slight drawback, if that's the right word, is that they were only on the air for a couple of days. Now, I realise for logistical reasons they may not have had a lot of say in that, but it's just a bit of a shame that the special event station licence, which can be valid up to 28 days maximum, that they weren't able to use it for longer than just literally that anniversary weekend. But it would have been a nice one to get into the log because it's celebrating the centenary of the BBC's first broadcast in Scotland, and the call sign used all those years ago was 5 Sierra Charlie, so Golf Bravo 5 Sierra Charlie for the special event call sign is a nice echo of that. And it was a joint operation between the BBC Amateur Radio Group and the West of Scotland Amateur Radio Society. Became involved as well. And just looking down the article, 300 contacts in 37 different countries. That's some going, even though conditions on HF are on the way up. So I missed it this time, but if I'm still alive whenever the next time is, I hope that I'll get them in the log next time, Martin.
Yeah, well, that'll be good. And yeah, I know you enjoy special event stations. The one that got me interested a little bit on this is that I know Colin, Martin, and Chris managed to go to the BBC when they opened their radio club in London. And the Director General at that time was there. Director Tony Hall was there. But this time, new Director General, but Tim Davey was actually there supporting it. So it's quite nice that the top man of an organisation supports amateur radio, I suggest. What do you think, Caryn?
I think it's really important to keep that connection. I think it's important that the commercial side and the amateur side walk hand in hand. That has to be. And I think there's a long history of that. On this side of the pond, too, we have had special event stations. I believe the most recent one I can recall was Philadelphia. There was an anniversary special event station for that. So I find it really exciting. Those of us who love radio. We just love radio. Whether it's amateur or commercial, it's something that touches the heart. I wish I could have worked one of these stations. It was gone in a flash, and propagation on this side of the pond is not always the easiest. On occasion, I have worked Scotland, and of course I've worked other stations, Ireland, and I'm in and around, but it's kind of spotty. So I see the stations, I try for them, but this one, blink and you miss it, and looks like I missed it. So, like Edmund says, maybe the next. No, I'll wait maybe 100 years and go for the next one. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, no problems, Caryn. Well, they shouldn't have to wait 100 years, should they? I mean, you could say do it every 10 years or something, or every 5 years. I think it would be a good one. Or every year, Edmund would enjoy that one, I'm sure. But that's a good one. Dan, did you manage to work this station, and what's your thoughts on it?
I did not, and I don't even know if they operated any CW. But one thing that I like about this story is that it sort of brings out the connection between early radio stations like this, broadcast stations, and amateur radio, right? I mean, the first stations on the air really were amateur stations, and some of them morphed into commercial stations, and the rules were set up, separate the two. But I don't know the whole history of 5SC, but, like I say, here in the U.S., a lot of the commercial stations actually started out as amateur radio stations. So there is a connection there.
Yeah, there certainly is. And interestingly enough, I now have a job working in the broadcast industry, not as a broadcast engineer, but in the broadcast industry. And it is interesting that there are a lot of people in the broadcast that are very, very interested in amateur radio or are amateurs. And yeah, I'd say one of the things I hope to do at some point in time is go out to the NAB out in the States and see what's going on there. I know it's happening in about 3 weeks' time, and a couple of the team are going out there, but it isn't me this time. But there you go. So there is a lot of cross-fertilisation between broadcast and amateurs, and this was good to publicise, 100 years of a BBC broadcast. So spot on, I'd say.
You've had a lot of different jobs.
I have. That's the problem.
It seems like every other episode you got a different job.
Well, I've had this one. I've had this one for like about 7 months, Dan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you a bit more about it, but yes, I've always been a person who's gone out there and found work to feed the family. And technically, I was retired for a year, and I got asked to go and do this project, which I'm loving a bit. So yes, I'm working again.
Great.
Dan. So yeah.
Dan, can I just mention, Dan, on the cluster, all of the spots for Golf Bravo 5 Sierra Charlie are in the phone portions of the respective bands. Looks like they did very well on 17 metres, which is nice to see. But it's worth looking at their qrz.com page, particularly if you like old photographs of transmitters from long ago.
I'll have a look at that.
So all in all, a really good one. And even if Dan has called me out of having so many jobs, and you're not the only person who's done it, Dan, recently. Oh, dear. Right, moving to our next news story. This is something that happens in the States quite regularly, but it doesn't seem to happen in other parts of the world that I know of, and certainly it wouldn't happen in the UK. But an amateur radio club has just donated a number of amateur books into the library system. And I know Frank was very big on this at one point in time, trying to get the ARRL to assist in this. But Caryn, what's your thoughts?
Well, Martin, I think this is really important. Libraries really are places where parents will sometimes take their kids, or kids will go after school while the folks are still at the office working. And yeah, they're there to do their homework, but they also wander around in the reference area. They take books off the shelves. I know as a kid, that's what I did. I would find a stack of books. I'd grab a book and I'd sit and I'd read. And this is a place where a lot of people sometimes get their earliest exposure to different things that may not be readily available in the classroom. And amateur radio, having that on the shelves is a real eye opener. I believe some libraries in the States do have meetings. Some ham clubs actually do meet at libraries. So there is a bit of a history of libraries supporting ham radio clubs. So in this case, it's a ham radio club supporting a library. Now, when I first saw that we were going to be discussing this story, you may have noticed I remarked, "Oh, we've done this already." But as it turns out, there was another story we had done a while back where a ham club made a donation to a library. So yes, this is very, very common. I think it's terrific. I wish we could find a way to determine what kind of a reach this has, or what kind of success this has in getting people to move forward into ham radio. There's really no way to quantify that, because you plant a seed of an idea and you never know where it's going to go, if it goes anywhere at all. But that's really generous of the club. And remember, these clubs are nonprofits. So you basically have a nonprofit giving a gift, which shows the amateur radio spirit. It shows, we are there to help. We are there to educate. We are there to help train if necessary. So I hope we see more of this story. I hope we see more libraries and more ham clubs having this kind of exchange.
Yeah, agree 100% with you. And as you were talking about that, Caryn, I was thinking, and it may very well happen in the States, but I don't think it happens over here. But if you donate a number of amateur radio books, if you had a generic email address for the club that donated them, saying, if you wish more information, or we meet on these days, and you just put a sheet or sticky sheet inside the front cover, or write something in to give people more information, because once they pick the book up, they can get very excited, but then where are you going to find, where are you going to go to the next level? So,
Oh yeah, and I suspect that inside the book, I'm guessing here, but it's pretty good guess that inside the book they have stamped either property of such and such amateur radio club or a gift from the so and so amateur radio club with the phone number or the location and the meeting dates below it. And certainly the reference librarians in the library can direct the more curious readers to the right resource to find. The clubs are not hard to find. But yeah, hopefully they're doing that, Martin. Yeah.
yeah, I was just thinking, I had mouth open, brain in neutral, thinking, I hope they do something like this, because then that allows people to follow it on with it. So, yeah. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's a great idea, but I would caution people who are clubs that are thinking of doing this to check with the library first. The reason I say that is I had this idea to do here in Ann Arbor, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. And I knew some people that were working there, and I brought that idea up, and they said, "Oh, no, we can't accept that kind of donation." And I said, "Well, why not?" And they said, "Well, if we accepted this donation from you, then we would have to accept donations from any organization, some of which we may not really want to have their books in our library." And so you know, here in this case, I noticed that one of the amateur radio club members was on the library board, which probably, was their in. But yeah, so not all libraries will accept these donations. So check first if you're thinking of doing it.
Yeah, and I suppose, and I've seen it in the UK, every now and again, libraries have, they churn their stock and they think, oh, this one isn't doing that well. So they take it out of the library and they sell it off as a book, sell it off for pennies to at the end of its life or whatever. So you might donate a whole load of books and find in about 3 or 4 years' time the library's taken them off the shelf and disposed of them. So I'm being negative on this one. I don't mean to be. I just hope it doesn't happen. And I think, looking at what I see on the table in front of these guys, it's interesting books. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, to my shame, I can't really comment very much on how libraries work in the UK because I read very little at all, and I can't remember the last time I set foot in a library, which is a shortcoming on my part. I appreciate. I would simply caution that if you put a sticker inside or a leaflet inside the book with your club's website address on it, just make sure that email address is monitored, because there wouldn't be anything worse than somebody coming across the book, being enthusiastic and wanting to become a radio amateur, sending an email to the address inside the book and then not getting a response at all, and maybe set up a separate dedicated address just for the purpose of receiving inquiries like that, just in case the email address in your book fell into the wrong hands and you started getting monumental amounts of spam emails. But other than that, Martin, there's nothing really extra that I can add.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's an interesting story. I must admit, I have a smaller library within about half a mile of me, which I very rarely go to, and I really must make the effort for novels and things like that. Unfortunately, I tend to get the books or the e-books out. Yeah, I'm guilty of not going as often as I ought, but when I do get to a library, I thoroughly enjoy it, and there's nothing greater than rummaging through a bookshop or a library, and sometimes you go to somewhere and there'll be an old bookshop where people have donated books or they bought old books as well. And if you get a chance, just go in, if you're interested in radio, you say to the person, "You got any radio or science? Where's the science and radio section?" And they'll often direct you to the back end of a bookshop where all the obviously novels aren't there. And you'd be surprised what treasures you can sometimes find in the back of some of these old second-hand bookshops. There aren't that many around. When I was a lot younger, there certainly was. But these days, when you find one, it's a real treasure. So that's another little tip for you to say. But good on the club for doing this, I would suggest. Now, our next news story. Is there a better way to safeguard vital repeaters? Well, Caryn, you asked the question, so I'm going to let you go first again on this one.
Okay, Martin. Yeah, this is a sad story, and you hear about repeaters being destroyed a lot. You hear about storm systems taking repeaters down. Even in other countries, say in India, where they have those horrible monsoons, you hear about repeaters coming down. In the Caribbean, you hear about repeaters coming down. They are vulnerable. In this particular story, in Oklahoma, in a 5-county area, there was one repeater, southern Oklahoma, the W5BLW repeater, really important repeater used by Skywarn, the Red Cross, a lot of the local emergency offices. It's a repeater from the Ardmore Amateur Radio Club, and it was named in memory of one fellow at the club, a Silent Key. It was on private property, on a mountaintop, a ranch, and as often happens out there, they were doing a controlled burn. They usually keep an eye on things when they do that, and the burn got out of control, completely wiped out the repeater, nothing left of it. I emailed the fellow. I asked. There's no insurance, so basically they're starting from the ground up with that. So in the meantime, they're going to put together temporary repeater, lower power, something just so communications can still be maintained in the event of a storm or some other situation that requires emergency communication. But wow, something like this reminds you how vulnerable certain areas can be, rural areas most particularly, and how really important it is to have amateur radio and to have effective communications. So back to the question, is there a better way to safeguard vital repeaters? Oh, I sure hope so. I don't know what they are, but I think people really do need to take a look at hardening them off a little bit more and making them, having waterproof or windproof protection may not be enough. He's optimistic. The good news is he expects there will be some communication capability even within a week, even within, say by the end of next week. But getting the big repeater back, that's going to take time, and I suspect that's going to take money. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I listen with interest on this, Caryn. Being involved with a repeater, fortunately ours is on top of a hospital roof, but repeaters aren't cheap to buy. I mean, in your terms, well, you normally pounds to dollars almost, so I would suggest a 2-meter repeater is going to cost in excess of £3,000 to put on. You've got to find that straight away, or $3,000 straight away, no messing around. That's without site rental and power and all those sort of things, and a mast and the one thing and another. So you talk about, is there a better way? Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, if there are repeaters that are deemed to be important and definitely needed, and maybe somebody needs to say, okay, let's look at a national network of repeaters. If they were deemed as important, then maybe there should be set themselves up as not a society, but an operating group that if disaster happens like this, others can help them. Maybe if they pay in a little bit between them, they can cover each other in times of this. Am I talking rubbish, Dan? Probably.
No, I think it's an interesting thought. My take on this is, this is a matter of cost, right? I mean, you can harden sites and by doing different things, whatever they are, I don't know. And in this case, I don't know that would have even been possible to fireproof an entire repeater site, but it gets to be a matter of cost. And if unless they're getting a big grant from ARDC, most clubs are not going to have the money to do that kind of hazard hardening. So, that's just the I don't know what you want to say, the crux of the matter. Here in the U.S., clubs can get insurance. They can get insurance through the ARRL for things like repeater systems. So, why, I don't know that the ARRL insurance would have covered this instance, or if, maybe they already had this kind of insurance, but, that's always something worth looking into as well, is to make sure that your club's equipment is covered by some kind of insurance policy.
Yeah, and I suppose another thing would be is to put like a fire break around the base of the repeater. So if you are on a mountaintop somewhere, in the spring you go up and you just make sure that the fire break's in place, so that hopefully the fire doesn't make it across to your repeater. I don't know.
And it's a matter of how much that costs.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Yeah, it's a shame that this happened, but you can see why it might.
Yeah. Edmund, I know this is a state story, but any thoughts on it?
Well, I suppose the only way you could safeguard it would be to have two repeaters on different bands, maybe a mile or two apart, but with very similar coverage areas, and maybe link the two via a microwave link. So if one of them went down for whatever reason, then the other one hopefully would stay on the air to rely on. But apart from that, I don't see how you could safeguard against something like this, because even if you had like a secret nuclear bunker underground with the logic and the cavities and the uninterruptible power supply, if you've got a raging fire above ground, that's still going to take out your tower and the coax and the antennas on the top. So hopefully repeaters being burnt due to controlled burns, quote unquote, will be few and far between. But in a circumstance like that, I just don't know how you would mitigate against it, Martin.
Yeah, I appreciate, and I appreciate where you're coming from. I just sometimes think that repeaters are one of those things where very few people put their hand in their pocket to support a repeater. Lots of people use it. There will probably be lots of people very upset because this has gone off the air. But they probably never helped to keep it on the air, and this probably came out of one man's pocket. And as costs have gone up, he's probably not insured it and taken a gamble, and it didn't pay off this time. So I'm guessing, I don't know. Please don't beat me up if I got that one wrong, but that seems to be the way of the world at the moment. Right, moving to our next news story. This really came from the broadcast industry. It said, in the car, podcasts and online audio continue to grow. And there's lots of graphs. Hopefully Colin will put these up on the website and bits and pieces about it. But there are lots of people who do listen to podcasts, and I'm pleased they do, because quite a few people tell me they listen to the ICQ podcast as they travel to work. So, Dan, what's your thoughts on podcasts in the car?
Yeah, I do this all the time. When I go on long trips, I'll either load up a USB stick, or if I have the podcast on my tablet, I'll connect it up to the audio input and listen to them. And I do feel a little bit guilty because, there's been talk in the U.S. of getting rid of AM radio in cars. So I feel kind of bad. I'm putting the AM radio stations out of business, but I think that's just the way things are going. People want to listen to what they want to listen to when they want to listen to it, and I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where we now have massive amounts of choice. You went back, say, 20 years ago, there wouldn't have been half the broadcast stations. You would have had probably CDs in your car, maybe cassette players. Now, a car I bought Mrs. B doesn't have a cassette player or a CD drive. It has a USB socket, and that's it. So, all right, it has radio, I'll give it, and it has got AM, I'll give you that. But, if you want anything other than radio, you plug a USB stick in, and away you go. So things are changing quite significantly in manufacture, certainly for cars. But there you go. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, I discovered the ICQ podcast in 2012, and for the first few years after that, I didn't have a smartphone. I had a very basic, antiquated phone that you could only use pretty much for making phone calls. How shocking is that, using a phone to make phone calls? So I did have an MP3 player, though, and after Ofcom authorized very low power FM transmitters in the order of 10 nanowatts in about 2006, I think it was, they legalized those. For the first few years of listening to the podcast in my car, I listened to it by playing my MP3 player through one of these little transmitters and listening to it down the bottom of the FM broadcast band on my car radio. So I was ticking two boxes at once. Beyond that, I don't really know what to say, because I tend not to listen to anything in the car these days, because I take the view that if I'm driving, I want 100% of my concentration on the road with as few distractions as possible. So I don't know if people these days really listen to the radio much in their cars or not, Martin. I don't know what to say yet again. Sorry about that.
No, it's a valid point. I mean, I must admit, I listen to either the radio or whatever else media I'm going to use in the car. It's more often than not if I'm on my own. You've travelled with me quite long distances at times, and if there's a group of us in the car, I don't turn the radio on. Or except I might turn the amateur radio on, you know that one. But no, I invariably don't turn the radio on if there's a group of us, because we end up chatting anyway, which is quite nice. Caryn, I know you like the idea of listening to podcasts in the car, though, don't you?
Oh, yes, Martin. I am guilty of listening to podcasts in my car. I also listen to Morse code in my car via the USB stick. I listen to Sirius XM in my car. I love my radio. I use my car radio. I'll even, out of guilt, listen to AM occasionally because I want to support it. But I do listen to a lot of podcasting, and many of the podcasts I listen to are amateur radio related. So I think it's a good thing. I think it is good for amateur radio. We, by nature, are, as hams, we enjoy advances in technology and we celebrate it. And yeah, even if we enjoy a lot of the legacy stuff, the old stuff, I'm sure even people who have tube radios, which are marvelous, like podcasts, I think there's just an across the board appeal to having access to all of this. I don't watch it when I'm driving, but I do listen to the audio of some YouTube videos because it's okay to hear it and not necessarily see it, because I do keep my eyes on the road. And I don't know that I'm a big fan of these big new screens in cars, but that's a whole nother topic, whole nother story. There's no harm in listening to podcasts since there's really no broadcast ham radio programming that I know of. So, yep, absolutely, Martin. You pegged me right on this one. You got me absolutely characterized as somebody who is in favor of this, and I hope to see more of it. But I do not want to see it at the expense of radio. I think there's room for everything, and I hope that will continue.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because often with, certainly with commercial radio, they have a playlist of about 40 songs, and they just rotate around those 40 songs. And after about a week, you get a bit bored with it, or I did when I was on the road permanently, driving here, there, and everywhere. So I used to switch stations quite regularly, but equally other media to listen to things I wanted to listen to. So in my early career, I wish there had been more podcasts, put it that way. As I say, it's an interesting concept. And I think people now have so much content that they will pick and choose. So we got to make it good, guys, to be picked. Aye.
Incidentally, Martin, if you're ever stuck in a traffic jam, one of those ones that really is taking hours and is going nowhere, it's worth tuning around between 87.5 and 87.9 and listening out for these micro-powered transmitters. A few years back, I was sitting in a monster traffic jam and enjoyed listening to virtually all of Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits CD that was being played through one of these little transmitters by the car in front of me.
Right. Yeah, not bad. I remember sitting in a mega traffic jam a long time before, where the car was back in the 90s and the car only had a tape player and a radio. And I was travelling 200 odd miles with my senior project manager. And we got stuck in traffic. And I went, okay. So I just sat back and just sat there and said, well, what it'll be. And she said, you don't get wound up, do you? And I went, no, I can't move. I can't move. It's not a point, Jenny. It's absolutely waste my time. And she was getting so worked up. Then she realised I used to have this mascot of a little hippo on the back seat. And she said, I know what will really wind you up. So if I take your hippo and throw it out the window. And I said, that might just about do it. But, there's no point. If you get stuck in traffic, Edmund, there's no problem. You guys are stuck there. But I hadn't thought of having another tune round, see what's being broadcast locally, put it that way.
Here in the U.S., a lot of low-power stations, like actual licensed stations, are down there in the lower portion of the band. And like you'll hear college stations and other sort of things. And those can be amusing to listen to at times.
Yeah, I'll just say, it's actually quite surprising just how many stations are around. You'd be surprised they slot them in, and not all of them are legal ones, but there are a hell of a lot of legal ones around now that of really obviously finding a market. So I know people say that the digital broadcasting stuff is where it should go, but there's still a lot between 88 and 108 megs. Band 2.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to add too, Martin, that we carried a story 2 or 3 weeks ago about the FCC granting licenses to 5 new FM stations, low power, in rural areas. But the FCC felt there was a need and an interest, and so it's still growing. I'll try to find out which ones they are, but we did have that story, and it surprised me. But the FCC these people are going to get on the air.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm only touching in the broadcasting industry recently, but yes, trust me, band 2, 88 to 108 megs isn't dead by a long way. So there we go. Right, FreeDV aims to bring open source HF digital voice to the mainstream down there in HF, and I really want this to happen because, you know, as we get more and more interference from one thing over down there, digital voice may very much help with some of the interference we get and keep the HF bands alive. Dan, this is a press release you put out for your company, the ARDC. So, you know, I'm not asking you to sort of pretend it isn't, but I think this is a good thing to do, don't you think?
Oh yeah, this is great, and this is what ARDC is for: is to find projects like this and support them so they can do a really good job. So in this case, ARDC is giving the FreeDV project $420,000 to continue development of FreeDV. And, one of the things that happens with a lot of these projects is that they're all done by volunteers, and volunteers have limited amounts of time and all that. So one of the big components of this grant is to enable them to actually hire an experienced digital processing developer. And presumably that person will, be a real expert and be able to do a bang up job on coding. The other big component of this grant is to allow them to promote it better. A lot of times these projects sort of, they get a lot of hype and people use it for a while and then it sort of goes away, right? Well, the part of this grant is to allow them to promote the project and not only promote it amongst the amateur radio operators, but also try and convince a commercial supplier or two, ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, Elecraft, whoever, to actually put FreeDV into their radios so that, you don't have to, do all kinds of sort of kludgy wiring to get it to work. It'll just be like another mode that you select in your radio and you'll be talking and receiving FreeDV. So this is really a very exciting grant, and I'm real hopeful that this is gonna push FreeDV sort of over the edge, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. And getting it into a commercial radio, a commercially made radio, as one of the protocols, I think is really going to help. If they can do that, that'll be great. It's a bit like M17 up in the VHF UHF, you know.
Oh, right. And M17 is also being supported by ARDC. And, in a way, M17 is FreeDV on VHF and UHF. They're using codec 2. And so there's going to be some synergy actually between these two projects.
Yeah. And I'm really hoping that both of those take off because, as you well know, I'm quite into digital voice. I have a TYT at the moment that can be converted to M17, but at the moment there isn't any M17 happening that I'm aware of. And I say I'm aware of in the UK, so it sits as a DMR radio at the moment, but it will get converted at some point in time. But there you go. Caryn, what's your thoughts on this one?
Okay. On this, I've really not experimented with any of this, so my thoughts are just based on theoretical stuff here. But for me, the most appealing part of this is getting the commercial radio folks involved. It's a real deterrent to experimenting for some of us if you've got to start with a mess of wires and adapters and figure out where to plug what in. And it also is it discourages you from wanting to be able, you can't go portable with this if you've got to carry all of this stuff with you and then sit down and figure out where it goes. I think the concept of plug and play, making it a very elegant way of just getting on and making it happen, is really worth investing in. I think it would open the door for a lot of folks. I'm intrigued by the idea, and I worry about what's going to happen to the HF bands as everything gets noisier and noisier. And it's possible in my lifetime that it might become a bit of a struggle. We're enjoying a nice ride on the bands right now. I love this solar cycle, but the party will be over at some point, and I think we need to be prepared for it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I know you do digital voice because I've worked you on DMR, but in some ways it's not the only way. And I still think, I had an AM contact the other week, and that was great fun. We do experiment, but if we've got another way of doing it, and as you say, as the noise level floor goes up, this might be a really good way of allowing us to use the HF bands, even though there's a fair amount of noise kicking around. What's your thoughts, Edmund?
Well, I have almost had a contact using FreeDV last year with Ed Durant DD5LP on 40 meters, and I enjoyed it. I'm not massively computer literate. I'm not hopeless either, but I'm sort of more at the simple end of using computers rather than the advanced end. And I managed to get the software up and running. And if I can do it, then probably pretty much anybody out there listening to this could do it as well. The only problem was that it doesn't have a spot frequency. It's acceptable to use FreeDV anywhere within the phone portions of the band. And when I was trying to hear Ed, and I got fragments of his transmission, we didn't really complete a QSO as such, but we could hear bits of each other. Signals weren't too strong. But on top of Ed, I could also hear signals from other QSOs using lower sideband very close to the frequency that the FreeDV transmission was on. I'd rather forgotten that I'd done that, so thanks for the reminder, Martin. And FreeDV is certainly something that I'd like to use later this year in May, when those of us in the UK can, if we wish, add the letter R for Romeo or Rex into our call signs to celebrate the coronation of King Charles. So now you've reminded me, I will see if I can manage at least one QSO using FreeDV, using the call sign with the special prefix, Martin.
Right, well, there you go. One extra thing for you to do, young Edmund, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Okay, go to our last news story. Caryn, you put this one in. Astronauts from the United Arab Emirates are going to be talking on space education. So I think there's a lot of people got a lot of things in their mind, and space is still something very, very exciting. I know when I was back in the 1960s, this was great. But 50, 60, 70 years on, it's still very, very interesting on what's happening. And I think it still lights a lot of boats. And, there's a lot of people that when they go into space have amateur radio licenses, don't they? There's always a amateur on the space station. So we are kind of hand in hand on this one, aren't we, Caryn?
Yeah, this is a super program because the cornerstone of this program is the presenter, is, I hope I say this right, Sultan Al-Nayati, KI-5VTV. And he's the second astronaut from United Arab Emirates. So he's a pioneer with a background in communications engineering. And what he is doing is he serves as the presenter for a 20-week learning program that is open to students around the world. So there are subtitles. This is not specifically just for people in education in the UAE. It will be available everywhere as a web stream. The program itself is the product of the Space Center there, the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, which is in Dubai, and they're working with the Emirates Literature Foundation. So this is all about communication. And in each of the 20 weeks, they're going to be talking about different aspects of what it is like being in space. And it's probably going to get down into some pretty heavy science, which is good. There are classroom-based activities that go with it, so educators can fashion lessons about this. I think the fact that a ham radio operator is going to be at the helm of this in the presentation is not trivial. I think it's great that he will be able to incorporate all of these principles and indicate the role ham radio plays as well. It's also a way of reaching out across borders. You know, space has no borders, so why should a program like this, which originates from the UAE, why should it only be for people living in those countries? The first of the 20 weeks is already online, and people have been watching it and using it. And 20 weeks is a nice chunk of time, so it's really going to develop into a very rich resource for the classroom and beyond. ARIS is not the only way to learn and experience, and ARIS is wonderful, but for many people, ARIS is a one-time classroom or school-based experience. This develops a relationship. And when you teach lessons based on a relationship, in this case, a 20-week-long, an ongoing relationship between the students and the people presenting the lessons, I think the after effects are bound to be a lot more enduring. So I praise them wholeheartedly for this wonderful, wonderful format. I think it can lead to some great things.
Yeah, and as you say, when you've got a program that runs a number of weeks, students tend to bond. You know, those that are really interested tend to bond into separate groups and kind of work together on these things. So I think this is a good thing. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
I can't think of anything to add, really, Martin. Sorry, my mind's gone blank. It's been a long day at work. I do apologise.
It's been a long day, and Mrs. B got you drinking the harder stuff, didn't she?
She did, and that was last week to celebrate 20 years of employment. So I'm not suggesting for one moment that the ICQ podcast has driven me to drink, or indeed Mrs. B.
Oh dear! No, she's a bad influence on you, Edmund. I got to say. But there you go. Now I know you haven't had a drink tonight. I was only joking. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, you know, in a way, space activities is our ace in the hole. You know, it's certainly a way to get not just kids, but all kinds of people interested in ham radio. I mean, you know, we can talk. You know, this is a great program here, but you know, we can talk through satellites in space. I mean, like, how cool is that? You know, so if you're interested in space and want to do like space stuff for a living, become a ham radio operator. You know, there's just like no two ways about it.
Well, certainly is. If you want to go to the International Space Station, I would suggest if you've got a ham radio license, certainly an American one, you got a better chance of going. Does my W9ICQ call sign count, Dan?
Well, it counts, but there are other mitigating factors in your case.
Right. Oh, one day I'm going to behave myself, I know. Yeah. But, a great program, and I think that's really good, and I'm pleased that this is happening, and a lot of people are going to get a lot of enjoyment out of this, so that's a good one. Right, let's find out what the guys have been up to since the last time I spoke to them. So, Caryn, You can go first because it's ladies first, but it's been quite some time since we had a chat, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I made good on my promise, which was to get myself outdoors. And I have done quite a few, when time permits, park activations, having a great time doing POTA, taking my doing it with a straight key, pounding away. It's cold here though, Martin. So I've been doing it inside the car. I fold down the split seat in the back of the SUV. I've got my 891. I've got my array of ham sticks. I invested finally in a rig expert, so we have a respectable SWR, and I'm just having the best time. It's like, where has this been my whole life? So we're doing that and getting ready for when the weather's a little more friendly to sitting on a chair or a bench in a park and getting out getting away from the rooftop hamstick and starting to put an antenna up in the park for that. So that's been my, I don't want to say activity, that's been my obsession. It's really occupied a lot of my thoughts. It's like, well, what's the weather like? I've got to get out there. Other than that, my other enjoyment has been with special event stations, and I am about to be part of a special event that is starting up next week, and I take part in these more than occasionally. It's when it's needed. The Autism Awareness Week is coming up, and I think it's World Autism Awareness. It's actually a fine and global. It's global special event, so it's not just here in the States, and a number of countries have hams that are participating, and we will be getting on. We'll be calling QRZ, and we will be explaining about autism and people on the spectrum to those who may not really understand it. And again, it's, you talk about amateur radio having the capacity to educate people, and this is a fabulous way to chip away at some of the mystery surrounding, in this case, autism. So I will be doing that, and I've got another special event coming up in a couple of weeks that we can probably talk about then. So that's been my life. Thanks for asking. Back to you, Martin.
Well, you sound so you're enjoying yourself, and that's the important thing. Amateur radio should be fun. And if you're getting out and about and operating, great. I must admit, I prefer going out and operating than sitting in a shack. And when the warm weather comes, I'll be out and about far more again. So I know what you mean, Caryn, on that one. Dan, what have you been up to?
Well, this last weekend, I went to the Hamzilla convention. Now, for those of you who may not know what Hamzilla stands for Ham Radio Science Citizen Initiative, something like that, SCI. And it's actually a bunch of researchers that are doing scientific research using amateur radio. And you guys may remember the Eclipse QSO party that happened a couple of years ago. So this Hamzilla group is the group that sponsored that initiative. And so they had a conference, and a lot of the researchers presented some of their research at this conference, which was all very interesting. I mean, you'd think that we would know like almost everything about the ionosphere by now, but we really don't. And these folks are doing it. One of the things they're doing, which I'll mention, is that in late 2023, there's going to be a big eclipse that goes from here in the U.S. that goes from like the Pacific Northwest down to the Gulf off Texas. And then in 2024, April 2024, there's going to be a total eclipse that will go from the southwest up to the northeast, so sort of the opposite direction. And these folks are gearing up to have another series of Eclipse QSO parties. So that's one of the things they're doing. And it was just a very interesting conference to attend. I do have one sort of amusing story. So this was held at the University of Scranton, where Nathaniel, what is his last name? I forget what his last name is, but his call sign is W2NAF. And he is a professor there at University of Scranton, and they're putting in a ham radio station there. And of course, this is all ARDC funded. But so when we were standing around, they had set up the radio. They don't have the station set up yet, but they did set up the radio so attendees could operate from there. And I was standing around with a couple other people, and I introduced myself to one fellow, and he says, "Oh, KB6NU." He says, "I listened to you on the ICQ podcast. I recognized your voice." So I got a kick out of that. But this conference was just a lot of fun, a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting topics, and it's given me some ideas on things to do around the shack here. For example, some of these folks are doing reception of VLF frequencies, and I've always had sort of an interest in that. So I'm gonna be looking into that and trying to do some of that here. But yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Yeah, sounds interesting. And you've got ahead of Frank, because I think Frank's a member of Hamzilla as well, and he waxes quite lyrical about that. But sounds very interesting stuff they're doing, Dan, and sounds like you really enjoyed yourselves down there. So that was a good one. Right, Edmund, what have you been up to?
Well, I'm glad that Caryn mentioned the World Autism Awareness Week that runs from the 25th of March until the 2nd of April, because in the UK we've got 3 special event stations on the air: Golf Bravo 2 Alpha Alpha, Golf Bravo 2 Alpha Alpha Whiskey, and Golf Bravo 0 Alpha Alpha Whiskey. And I think I'm right in saying that those stations will be on the air from England, Wales and Scotland. The Golf Bravo 2 Alpha Alpha one is being run by John, Mike 0 Hotel Echo Mike, who is very well known in the UK for his involvement with special event stations. So certainly if you go to qrz.com and put in Golf Bravo 2 Alpha Alpha, there's lots of information on there. The call sign for the American one is Whiskey 2 Alpha. So is that the call sign you'll be using, Caryn, or will you be doing something different?
That is it. That is absolutely it. Sure. Whiskey 2 Alpha starts next week.
Wonderful. Well, I'll certainly try and get the UK ones in my logbook, but it's not just the UK and the US. There's going to be special event stations on the air from various other countries as well, so definitely worth listening out for. In terms of what I've actually done recently, not a lot in terms of operating. I went to Amberley Museum a week back last Wednesday, and was very pleased to see that most of the bands were in a lot better condition than they had been the last time that I was there in 2022. Our best EX on 10 meters SSB was Cuba with just 100 watts, so that wasn't bad. Ran Whisper for 24 hours. No, I didn't, tell a lie. From sunrise to sunset on Monday, the 20th of March, the spring equinox, and propagation there was very good. Even managed to get across the east coast of the United States early in the morning, so that was very gratifying. And I was very pleased to attend Hamzilla with Martin and Carol and Colin, M6BOY, and good to see Chris Howard there, M0TCH as well. Thoroughly enjoyed myself and bought a few items, including a nice pair of socks that said I'm radioactive, so I can wear those with pride whenever I go on the air. But I believe that the feature for this episode is to do with Hamzilla, So I won't say too much more other than it was really nice to be there and to see some old friends, and I'm very grateful to the organisers, Jonathan and Emily in the main, for making the event happen.
Yeah, it was great fun, wasn't it? I enjoyed that one. Right. Well, I don't know if I've done as much as some of you guys have done. Colin came over the weekend for Hamzilla. He did drag me to football, and I had or soccer as you guys call it in the States, and I had my first experience as an away supporter. Now, I say supporter very loosely because I'm not interested in football. I go spend the time with Colin and enjoy. But it's one of those experiences, if you haven't done it, it's one you can put in the back of your brain, say, I've done that now, tick it off on the list. So that was okay. Sunday, we did go down to Hamzilla, and Edmund said Chris went off in his camper van the day before. You came up to me, didn't you, Edmund? And Colin was here, and we got Mrs. B to take us down in the car. It was a good rally. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I did a presentation in their lecture stream there, which will be up on YouTube at some point in time soon. I haven't seen it yet. Colin hasn't showed me, so I'm waiting to see that one. And what goes out on the podcast this weekend as audio features, there'll also be the video of it. And Colin has been experimenting with a new video system, though we did find one minor issue. At the end, I was interviewing the two organisers, Emily and Jonathan, but we only had two wireless mics, and there was three of us. Worked that one out, but it worked, so that wasn't too bad. I bought one thing at the rally, and I walked up the rally and I looked at this thing, and I looked at the price on the top, and I said to the guy, "How long's that been there?" And he said, "All morning." And I said, "You're having a laugh." He went, "No," and he had this RF signal generator. And I think it goes from 120 kilohertz up to 500 megs. And it's a valve one, but it's not a huge thing. It's quite a nice little valve one. In fact, my dad had one. It was his pride and joy. So I bought it. And I thought, I'll buy it for spare parts and see if it's any good. If it works, it'll be great. So I paid £5 for it. I took it home, and in fairness, looking at the circuit, there were 3 capacitors I needed to change to renovate it. And when I took it apart and had a look, somebody had tried to do the renovation, replaced the first capacitor, and broke a track on the PCB, and the thing didn't work. So I reconnected the track, and then I changed 2 other capacitors, which I feel needed changing due to the age of the equipment, switched it on, and it worked. So I got a nice new signal generator for £5. Now, when I had a look at it on the scope, some of the RF waveform looks absolutely horrible, and I was just about to think that it was the valves are biased in the non-linear section, and then realised that to get the high frequencies, they're using harmonics. To get up to 500 megs, they're using harmonics. And if I rebiased it to get nice clean sine wave out, I wouldn't get any harmonics, and therefore I wouldn't get the high frequencies. And I had to look at my dad's one, and my dad's one is equally as horrible. So, in fairness, it's working as it should do, but just a bit of fun. Been doing a fair amount of club things with Chris and Martin. A lot going on in the club at the moment. And last thing is, Mrs. B managed to drop her phone and break it. So I ended up having to buy her a new phone at exorbitant money. But I then took her old Samsung 9 into work today, and another engineer, another amateur, and I took it apart this morning. I found the fault. And while it's in bits, I'm going to order a new battery for it because her old Samsung 9 is newer than my Samsung 8. So I'm about to get a Samsung 9, which, all right, is 4 years old, but I don't do anything secure on it anyway. And put a new battery in, it'll give it a long lease of life. So that's what I've been up to. Not a lot of radio, unfortunately, apart from I do have a number of chats on the talk group throughout the week and that sort of thing. So I think we've all been pretty busy, guys, and thoroughly enjoyed tonight. All that's left for me to do is to thank the guys for joining me, and then we'll continue with the rest of the podcast. I'd like to thank Mr. Dan Romanchik KB6NU.
My pleasure as always.
Thanks, Dan, for joining me. I'd like to thank Caryn Murray, KD2GUT, for joining us.
Thank you. It's been great as always.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it tonight immensely as well. And last but not least, Mr. Edmund Spicer, M1MRB.
Thank you very much for having me on, Martin.
That's great, mate. No problems at all. And I'm glad your whisper light's working. So, all I'm going to do now is say 73s, and we'll catch you again soon. 73s, guys.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now we'll have a look at the news in brief from me, Colin M6BOY. News that was announced since our last show, you might have missed. UK National Hamfest has been cancelled for 2023. To summarise the problems, unfortunately the usual venue wasn't available and they tried to move to a new location, couldn't get the relevant dates, and other dates were offered, etc. were very just problematic, and traders, etc. couldn't commit to dates that were being offered. So after concluding the potential risk of, a flat event, the organiser took the tough decision to, postpone the event until 2024, which will be back at the Newark Showgrounds, its usual venue, on the usual dates of the 27th and 28th of September. National Hamfest, we're skipping a year and be back in 2024. The Ham Radio Hub, Essex Hams, are releasing their annual survey, and amongst many of the questions they're asking about the hobby is they're going to be asking about your national society, the RSGB in particular, and what service you use, and do they offer value for money, etc. So we're going to pop a link to that on the ICQ podcast website for you, so you might be able to take part and show your views. And I know there's a lot of members of the RSGB from around the world, and it'd be good to the guys at Essex Hams to get your feedback on what you think. And we finish up with news from Connecticut, where Governor Ned Lamont has released an official statement designating the week of the 16th to the 22nd of April as Amateur Radio Recognition Week. And this coincides with World Amateur Radio Day, which is held on the 18th of April. So it's a great opportunity there for, clubs and hams around Connecticut. There's about 40 radio clubs in the area, to show, what we do and our hobby, etc., and have the governor's recognition of our community and, the good that we bring across the board. So, great opportunity in Connecticut, to promote the hobby with the governor's support. Right now we head over to our feature in this episode, which is our interviews from the recent Hamzilla event. There's going to be chats with SDR Play regarding SDR Connect and CCOM antennas regarding their 23/7 antenna, along with a good chat with the organisers as well. So as always, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Welcome everybody to our feature for this episode number 399, and these are interviews we conducted at the recent Hamzilla show in Kent in the UK. Chris M0TCH talks to Andy from SDR Play and chats about the work they're doing in relation to the SDR Connect software and the developments they're doing in relation to moving their company forward into a new platform. And along with that, he also caught up with Mike from CCOM, where amongst the many things they discussed was the success of his 23 centimetre antenna that he brought to the market recently. Martin M1MRB called up with Emily and Jonathan from the organising committee, and they discussed obviously the trials and tribulations and the successes of putting on the Hamzilla show. So we're going to start off this feature with Chris talking with Andy from SDR Play.
Right, here we are at Hamzilla 2023 here in Ashford in Kent. I'm with Andy from SDR Play. Andy, welcome.
Hiya.
Nice to see you again. And it's been a year I think since we last interviewed you on the podcast. I know you're the developer for SDR Play and very busy with developing and supporting your products. So how have things generally been?
Yes, I think the last time we spoke we had a number of manufacturing issues that we were working through. The guys have done a great job and we've worked our way through that. We've got product to sell, which is always...
Yeah, I think the chip shortage and things are causing an issue, and I think that hopefully that's now looking better.
Companies seem to be picking up, devices and components as quick as as they were coming on the market. So we were sort of struggling with everybody else along that front. But no, the guys have done a great job, and we've got, like I say, we've got product to sell, so we're in a good position. So we're focused on the software side.
Yeah. So the big announcement, I suppose, was that we got this new SDR Connect platform, and I think when I was over in Friedrichshafen, we saw John there. He was doing a quick demo there. It was a very early version, I think, of it at that point. He was showing the hardware running in the UK and then him showing the interface running on his laptop, I think it was, or PC in Germany, and that was working pretty well. But I think things have progressed a bit since then. I think you've been pretty busy, haven't you?
Yeah, so we've been very busy over the last, I suppose the heat sort of the last 9 months, I suppose, has really sort of cranked up the development of it. We're pretty close to a full release of the first version. We've decided that we're going to do preview builds. So the first version there'll be iterations of that going forward. So as soon as people get it, we'll have a mechanism by which people can kind of get feedback to us.
So we should perhaps explain. So SDR Uno is the product you've had for many years, and that's been the software, but that runs on Windows.
Yeah.
But this new SDR Connect has got the main thing is around the compatibility with other platforms. So I think you were saying it works on Mac. Perhaps you can tell us how it works.
So SDR Connect will work on Windows. It's a 64-bit application, but it runs on Windows, Linux, Mac, and any flavor, any sort of flavor that supports Ubuntu and Raspberry on Linux. It's difficult to cover the wide variety of Linux OSs that are out there, but any mainstream OS on those platforms should be fine. And we've improved on things like the installation process as well to make it a bit simpler to use. And just the UI's had a...
Yes, as he was showing me earlier, the user interface, and we'll get Colin to do some shots of this in a minute. Hopefully we'll be able to cut us into the video. It looks a bit different, but I think it's definitely going to be an improvement, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, so with SDR Uno, you kind of was given everything all at once, and it remained on the screen whether you were using it or not. So with SDR Connect, it's very context-driven software. So you can collapse the menus that you don't need, and you can just focus on the areas.
So you can really customise the view.
The view. All the panels dock and undock, which was one of the things that we told people we were doing. So if you've got multiple monitors and you want VRXs to be on different monitors, you can still do all of that.
Sure.
But you can also bring it back to a single instance.
A single window,
window.
And this is running on a Mac, I think, isn't it?
This application at the moment is running on Mac. It's all right. It's CPU load's very low. Effectively, this has been a ground up.
I was asking you earlier. So obviously, this is moving on from SDR Uno, but how much of the code has been transferred across, and how much of it is completely written from scratch?
Yeah, vast majority of it, if not probably well over 90% of it, is brand new. we realised that whilst SDR Uno has some really good features about it, there were some things in there we just didn't feel needed to be carried forward. So we effectively had to sort of start again.
Sure.
And so like we've started again with the UI. A lot of the DSP code has been done from scratch.
Yeah.
The audio codecs, demodulators are better than SDR Uno.
That's good.
And so we've made a lot of changes that we're using the GPU now as well. So the CPU load is
lower.
Is very low. And we've got some great networking technology that obviously SDR Uno never.
Yeah, so that was the big thing, wasn't it? The fact you can actually have the hardware sat somewhere else. So you might have a great location for radio, but it's not somewhere you basically, you might have a friend's house or your parents' house or whatever, might have an aerial there, and you could be at the radio club, or you could be at work, or wherever else, and you could be using SDR.
So
SDR Connect and
today,
listening to it.
I've been using obviously local RSPs, but I've also been accessing a server in Wales and a server in Florida.
Yeah.
And over I thought we were going to have Wi-Fi here, but I can't get onto it. So it's all going through 4G on my phone. So we've got some great technology that allows you to visualise. I think I've got 8 megahertz of bandwidth over
a 4G connection.
4G network.
Yeah, so it's not requiring a huge amount of bandwidth then, essentially, to be able to do that.
No, for an audio system. So you're just sort of tuning and listening. It's very, very low bandwidth.
Sure. And this interface is similar across the different platforms, whether it's Windows or
unfortunately I don't have the other machines still up and running, but it looks identical and it behaves identical on Mac, Linux and Windows. It's the same interface.
And if you're someone that's familiar with using SDR Uno today, how difficult will it be to transition across to this new solution, you think?
I think for the power users, the first version will probably be, well, where's this, where's that?
Yeah, where's that button to do it, so yeah.
So we've got a minimum set of features that we are putting into the first build, but obviously it's not going to be anything like, there won't be any scanning, there won't be any scheduler, that sort of stuff. But we've got a minimum subset of features that we're putting into here, and at that point we'll get it out to the public, and we will then continue to just build on it. So we will get all those things in. It's just that we need to get to that minimum level that we've set ourselves before and this is kind of why we kind of haven't released it yet. Is because we're sort of sticking to that minimum. You want
to make sure what people get is going to be usable.
We could put this out, and people would probably use it and go, no, where's this, where's that? And it becomes, and we don't want that experience for people. We want people to have a better experience. Pretty much all of the of SDR Play guys have come from a consumer products background, and we're trying to sort of bring a level of professionalism, to the market. So that's why we're sort of
hesitant to put something out.
We're big on things like software and on documentation and support and all this kind of stuff. And we want it to be we want people to not just have to buy the hardware and then get home and then figure out how to use it. We want people to buy
it's the full package.
It's the full package. It's the software, the hardware, the experience, so that you sit down, you plug it in, it does what it says it's going to do, and then you can explore from there. You can go on and do lots of other things.
Now, I know one of the big things you previously had around SDR is the plugins. That you could have third parties and you could develop plugins to enhance your platform. Is that something we support in SDR Connect?
Yeah, so SDR Connect is a very modular application. We're calling them modules now in SDR Connect, not to kind of confuse the two systems. So they will be slightly different. People that have made plugins for SDR Uno will be able to move those plugins to SDR Connect. It will require a bit of work because the UI is obviously different. But in terms of the interface and the data that's we'll still be sending back and forth the same data and controls. So there shouldn't be that too much.
But it will require someone to update those, essentially.
And so when we get a bit nearer the release of that, we will contact certainly the ones that we're aware of, and we'll put the information out and say, look, for you guys, this is kind of how you kind of migrate from where we were to SDR Connect.
So if you're someone that's using a plugin today that isn't quite available for this new platform, I presume you'll continue to use SDR Uno for a while?
Well, SDR Uno will still continue to be maintained for as long as it needs to.
Yeah.
I don't know how much new development will occur in it, but we'll still do bug fixes and we'll still maintain it. And so, yeah, the plugins that are working in there will continue to be supported.
Sure.
So, I hopefully, once we kind of get up and running with Connect, hopefully we'll see a quick transition.
Yeah.
And get people. I know some of the guys some of the developers have already been asking me about the new interface.
Okay. Right, so they're quite keen to move on then.
They're quite keen to be ready for when this is ready. So we'll try and. We'll try and work with those guys closer, a bit nearer the time.
Now, I know you probably haven't answered to this one, but in terms of time, have you got any idea when this is going to be released?
I'm going to get crucified if I
So
mention any sort of time frame. Even the word "soon" is got me in trouble.
So we're talking this year, 2023?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll definitely be. I'd like. I think we're pretty close to getting the first version ready. I don't.
But you can't give a date.
I'm not going to say exactly when, but it is. Yeah. I mean, the purpose. I know people don't like us showing. Some people don't like us showing it and not have access to it.
Sure. Yeah.
But the purpose of showing it kind of proves it exists, because I've heard some things. I've heard some things that people say, well, it can't exist.
It's not vaporware, it actually does exist.
Yeah, it does exist. It runs on all the platforms. It does what we say it does. It's just not quite ready yet.
Sure.
And so we want to make sure that it's ready and give people the experience that we want people to have.
Cool.
It's taken us longer to get there than we expected for a variety of reasons. It's not been a great time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so, it's been quite a process, but I am going from here back to continue working on it. So that's kind of I've been let out for the day.
You're a busy guy, Andy. I know you come along to these events and you're kind of promoting the products and selling things.
Well, I get a lot of these events. I mean, I've been talking to people all day about how they use the product, what they'd like to see, how the product to go.
Yeah, I guess these events are important for you to get feedback.
It's really, we do get feedback on social media. I'll be honest, with what's been going on with SDR Connect, I've removed myself from social media. I've had to really, which has been a bit unfortunate. I'll get back there at some point, but and so this is the first event I've been to for a long time.
Right.
And I've had some really great feedback today, and I've met some really great people, and I'll go and do some.
Because your role essentially is the primary developing this, and I guess supporting it and this sort of thing as well.
I'm not the only one working on it, but I'm responsible for it being delivered. So I think it's important that kind of come and answer questions to people and talk about where we're going.
Cool.
The fact that we kind of pride ourselves in being open and transparent, but that has its downsides.
Yeah.
And the problem that we faced is because when you're too open and transparent, people will sort of say, well, you said it was going to be
certain
this,
expectations and things.
Set expectations. Yeah. And whilst we are working as hard as we can, things happen, and things have happened that have made us change. The UI has changed quite a bit. We've kind of liked some things, we haven't liked some other things, and some platforms have been easier to get up and running than others. It's been quite a challenge, and I think if you talk to anybody that's sort of developing this sort of software, they'll probably have a very similar experience, that it's taken them a lot longer than they thought it was originally.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But it is a priority for us. It does exist. It is coming. We just need a bit more time to make it the product that we want.
To finish it off and polish it and get it ready.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So look, Andy, if anyone wants more information about SDR Play, what's the best place to go?
So sdrplay.com/SDR Connect is the page for the software, and there will be updates and stuff on there. John always does posts online when we've got something to say, on the Twitter or
social
Facebook
media,
groups, any sort of social media like that. So as soon as we've got something ready for people to have a go at, we will get it
let
out
us
there.
know.
We're as keen for people to have a go at it as anybody really.
Excellent.
But it needs some more work, and then we'll be ready.
Fantastic. Andy, thank you very much for your time, and best of luck.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
The ICQ podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Good afternoon. We're here at Hamzilla 2023 in Ashford in Kent. Everyone's just packing up the stand. There's not many folks left, but Mike has very kindly left his stand intact so he can show us, because I know, Mike, it takes a long time to set this up, doesn't it, when you arrive in the morning?
Yes, it takes a while, Chris.
And it will take a while to take down, so we thought we'd come and talk to you now. So, Mike, welcome again.
Thank you.
Mentioned we're on the Seacom stand. So what have we got that we haven't spoken about before that you can talk to us about today?
So we last spoke last year, I believe. Since last year, the last rally we was at, there were lots and lots of inquiries for 23 SEMs.
Yes.
There's not much on the market.
In fact, I think I said to you actually when we spoke a while ago, we could really do an area of 23 SEMs because there's a gap in the market there.
And I went away, done a bit of brainstorming, and we've come up with this, a vertical 10 dBi gain 23 SEMs antenna.
Excellent.
They're selling quite well actually.
And Martin has reviewed this, hasn't he, a couple of episodes ago?
Indeed, yes. He's done a nice little review for me.
So talk us about what's inside that then, and what makes it good.
It's a vertical antenna.
Yeah.
Okay. 10 dBi gain. It's got an N-type connector on the end. Inside we've got 6 half-wave elements tuned to the centre of the band, and throughout the band we've got an SWR below about 1.2 across the band, just creeping up slightly the edges to 1.3. So I'm really happy with it.
It looks pretty weather tight, that sort of thing. It should last. Looks like
fiberglass tubing, marine grade, resin glue around the joins, and a nice lightweight aluminium bracket.
Now,
and there's not much else to it.
With it being a pretty high frequency, what sort of feeder would you typically use? I know you've got the N-type on there. Would that require something fairly high quality?
Obviously, at the higher frequencies, it's more lossy.
Yeah.
So I would recommend like an LMR 400 or so. I think Martin's used RG213, so it's quite a bit of loss.
Yeah.
But it still works another station on it, so yeah.
Yeah, no, you said that.
So you don't need expensive coax, but obviously it helps.
Certainly, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, looking else on here, I know this morning I was watching you setting things up, and you've got this huge 10-metre aerial. Perhaps talk to us a little bit about that. I don't know if, Colin, you can point up at the aerial there. We've got...
So, at the last exhibition we was at, we had 2 metre, 4 metre and 6 metre Moxons, which sold really well. But since then, not hundreds, but lots and lots of inquiries for a 10 metre version.
Sure.
10 and 11 metre. So, we made it, and there it is.
Excellent.
It's quite big, but it's not as big as a full-size 10 metre like Yagi or a dipole, because the ends are folded in.
Yeah, because I know at the moment 10 metres seems to be a pretty popular band. I think with the way the sunspot cycle's going and propagation, 10 metres seems to have come alive.
The last few weeks it's gone crazy. It's everyone I'm building is selling out.
So they're selling well, the 10 metres.
That's because of the price at the moment. I've done an introductory price, which is quite cheap. In fact, half the price of everyone else.
And that's the problem, Mike. Your aerials are good quality, but really cheap.
Yeah, well, I've not no middleman, have I?
Yeah.
I've not got many overheads, so I like to pass that on, Chris.
So you're still selling direct. You're not going through resellers.
I've not gone through anyone yet. On some of the antennas, I might start putting into the shops, like this 23 SEM, just really for the publicity. But
right.
Yeah, I need to take that step, don't I?
Well, it's up to you, I suppose. Okay.
I'm plodding along as I am, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
And other things that are selling well. So you've got your things from before. So your airband aerial, you've got your 270 collinear, you've got your 4 metre dipoles, your 4 metre J-poles and other J-poles. What do you find generally sells well?
Sell out all the time. I've got a huge waiting list. Nearly didn't have any for today because they just sell the second I put them on the website, but I kept 10 aside for today.
Right. You've got a couple spare there.
3 left, so it's going to make 3 very happy people tonight.
And I think you were saying these take a lot of effort to put together.
They do. There's a lot of time involved. There's a 4-to-1 balun on there. We've got one on the end set up, but yeah, there's quite a lot involved. The moulding of that, all the fittings, putting it together, and there's not much profit on the J-poles, so they're a bit of a burden to make. but
they do sell very well.
What it is, they take so long to make. So yeah, there's not much profit versus time on it. So I keep saying I'm not going to make them, but I feel bad because everyone begs me for them. So yeah, so that's that. And then what else have we got? We've got a few other bits on the stand today. I'm going to start doing some HF stuff. I've bought a load of ferrite cores and stuff. So
okay. A few accessories and things. Okay.
So make some nice quality.
And have you got ideas for new products so you want to talk about today, or is that a bit top secret?
Yeah, we've got a few. So dual band Moxon I'm going to bring out purely because everyone keeps asking. It's like a 4 and a 6 or a 10 and a 6. What else have we got? Some Yagis coming out. I've just been setting up the jigs and stuff to make them quite quickly.
Right.
Using the larger mould for the 10 metre Moxon, if you look at the centrepiece, it's a lot bigger than the usual dipoles, a bit chunky.
So you've had to invest in a new mould for that?
And the tubes are next size up.
Right,
I've also got another mould, so it's 1 inch fitting.
Right.
It's quite a chunky centrepiece.
Oh, so you can start making larger aerials.
HF stuff.
Okay.
It's just getting time at the moment, and my workshop's quite small, as you know, very small. Couldn't swing a cat in there, and garden's quite small as well, so to make the HF stuff I'm going to have to most definitely get a workshop. Well,
I think you were saying there's a lot of requests for HF aerials that you get.
That's where the money's going to be, I think. Not the money, but
the market. Yeah,
because most stuff's got HF, isn't it? So
cool. Okay. So Mike, before we wrap things up, again, whereabouts people go to find out more or to place an order?
The best place, Chris, is www.ceecom.co.uk. So CEECOM, not spelled with an S.
No, we'll slap Martin and spell that one. Thank you very much, and
thank you, guys.
Best of luck.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
You.
Cheers, Mike.
Cheers.
Well, hi guys, Hamzilla. Today I have Emily with me and Jonathan, the organisers for Hamzilla, and you look really refreshed after a really busy...
So, to answer your question, it's a team effort. It's not just Jonathan and Emily. Lots of other people work very hard on this. We had a few issues, but overall it's been a roaring success. The feedback's been very positive.
Yeah, I appreciate that because, as I say, from our team, we have a team effort and we'll work together. So, without working together, these sort of events wouldn't happen.
There's no I in team.
No. I'll explain that later, but never mind.
Indeed.
But no. I think it's been great. As I say, it's your first try at this event, this venue, rather, yes. And it's an interesting venue. You know, I mean, let's face it, you got a running track, so if you're running for the door, God,
absolutely. If they run past all of the stalls, so you don't buy anything.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually the form of this room, the way the lines converge with parallax as it goes further down, it makes it look bigger than it is, you know. Yeah. And it's had its challenges, this venue. But yeah, it's been a success,
it has.
And we're very pleased with it.
Yeah,
and we're grateful to you for supporting it as always.
Well, we're always pleased to support you.
We're always grateful.
Next year, are you doing it next year?
Yes, we are.
There will definitely.
I've actually plucked a date out to avoid Mother's Day, so my date for next year is the 17th of March.
17th of March.
Yes, because Mother's Day is earlier. Mother's Day is the 10th.
All right.
And so we are the 17th.
And we're hoping we can count on your support.
You can count on my support. Yeah, no problems at all on that.
Fantastic.
One. As I say, I'll also be with you at your grand day out.
Yeah, so Ham Radio Network, it's not really Dover Club, Ham Radio Network have a grand field day at Wilsborough Windmill on the
26th of July, I want to say.
It's certainly July.
It's the summer.
Yeah.
And it's a great day out. Some operating and a bit of sunshine.
I thought it was your event, but I apologise.
No, I did keep telling everybody our event. Our event, but actually, it's Ham Radio Network.
Yeah. Ham Radio Network and Dover Amateur Radio Club are very closely aligned.
Yeah. So, positives from this one, you know, you were busy. You know, there was a time when I couldn't get from one end of the hall to the other, and the boys ragged me for it without talking to about 15 people in the length of the hall.
It was difficult.
It was good though.
It was good.
There was a lot of people here.
Yeah.
There was some interesting gear on sale.
There was.
I actually bought one thing, and I said to the person when I'm buying it, I said, "Are you sure? How long's that been sitting there?" And he looked at me all morning. I said, "At that price?"
Gosh.
I said, "I can't walk away."
Can I just say, I've learnt in my many years of existence that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
It probably is.
So you might get home and find it doesn't work.
Well, I'm not too worried, because if it doesn't work, that will give me far more enjoyment than trying to fix it
There
anyway.
you go.
But
Good
the other thing is, and while Mrs. B's not listening, I've actually got an identical one at home.
So
and it belonged to my dad, and it was his pride and joy signal generator. And if this one doesn't work, it doesn't matter, because there'll be spare parts to keep the other one working for a longer period.
It'd be like Trigger's broom.
Yeah, Trigger's broom. But
brilliant.
No. I think what you did with the lecture stream was good as well.
Thank you.
In fairness, I think that more ham events should have that. I mean, yes, we all want to come and get the bargain, blah, 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 but ham events like this are social events, and they're an opportunity to see something new. Now, I know I did a talk for you, but not everybody's interested in what I do, but those that are had a chance to see it. As we go forward, those sort of things are probably something that are well worth doing.
See, what you've got to remember is it says in the UK Ofcom amateur radio licence that the purpose of amateur radio is about education and experimentation.
Certainly is.
And it's really important that we're all drinking the Kool-Aid of the education stream and trying to share knowledge with other people, because that's a really important part of the hobby. And both Dover Amateur Radio Club and Ham Radio Network are very keen to promote that.
Yeah. Well, one of the other clubs that was here today has invited me to do a talk for them. Now, if I can fit it in, and I've been perfectly honest with them, if I can fit it in time-wise, I will do that for them, because it is about promoting our hobby.
Absolutely. And that club, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is associated with a computer club that does lots of great work with kids.
Yeah.
So really, really important, and I'm really pleased they've got you along to help them.
So,
absolutely.
Looking around, it was nice to see Lara's here. Yeah, and I know you're a licensed amateur, Emily, but there aren't that many ladies in our hobby.
No, there's
not.
not.
I mean nicely about
of course.
And Judith's a lovely lady, and I wind her up with a bright concealer. Nicely, not nastily. And her husband's a great guy. So, but it was nice to see that you had a nice mix of what was going on.
Yeah,
here.
I was pretty happy about that, actually. It was a really good mix of people, and we tried to kind of spread it out as well. So we had lots of different people next to each other, not all, bunched up the same type of group. We tried to mix it all up, didn't we? Yeah. And they were all really appreciative, actually, of the new venue, because it's so close to the motorway. It saved them a lot of time against where we were before. A lot of people said that to me, that they really like the venue for that. And are we coming back here next year? So it was good to hear.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I was about to joke with you and say you put us orange shirts up the far end out of the way, keep us out of trouble.
Well, I kind of wanted you near the talks because I thought it would be really cool to, be there.
Yeah.
We had this discussion. We have a lot of discussion with Andy Wybrow, M0IRU, because he has managed this before in previous years. So he was, we had lots of little chats with him about what's happened, what's gone before. So that was really, really useful for us, and he was very supportive. About where we put everybody, and because he knows the kind of types of people that will be coming along.
It's like a wedding. There's always a little bit of you don't want to put them next to them. No, they're all lovely people. Don't get me wrong.
No.
But there's always little cliques, aren't there?
There are, and in fairness,
Barrowing furnace.
Barrowing furnace, yeah. Long way away furnace. No, in fairness,
he's thinking, come on, get on with it.
No. He's used to this sort of thing. Bye, Colin.
This is what you came all this way for.
There you go.
Yeah. No, but in fairness, it was good fun.
Yeah, it was
fun. Yeah.
You know, not everybody's going to get on with everybody.
No.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm big enough and ugly enough now to know that some people don't like me. I have a problem with that. For those that don't like me, there are others that do. I'll spend the time with those that do.
Absolutely.
Colin put his hand up when
he does. Yeah, he's not getting the lift home now. But no. So next year, similar plans?
Yes. So we'll keep this on our list of venues, but we may look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of, because we were at Sandwich before, and it wasn't until quite late in the day, relatively speaking, that we heard that we couldn't use the venue at the at Sandwich Discovery Park. So we were, we needed to find somewhere quite quickly, which is when we, again, it was Andy that found this venue, wasn't it? So when we came and looked around, we were like, brilliant, it's a massive space, it's just what we need. There's just, there's parking and everything, it's really, really good. But we'll look around, I think. But we will stay in this vicinity because of the proximity to the M20. We know that that's going to bring in lots more people being so close to the motorway. So yeah, we will keep you posted as to what we do. But
there are certainly some lessons that we'll learn from this experience. It's the first time we've moved a rally from one location to another.
Yeah.
And if we could turn the clock back, we might have asked slightly different questions.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
You've got to learn from it, because otherwise, there's no benefit.
True. You learn from it and you listen to advice.
100%.
And I always say to people, if you're going to give me criticism, give me constructive criticism. Don't say you're an idiot. You have to say you're an idiot because X, Y, and Z.
100%.
Or whatever. I'm not saying you're an idiot, of course.
I know. I was just mouthing something to the camera.
Oh, you was. Muppet, yeah. But I tell you what I like about this venue, just having wandered in, looked round, there are so many PowerPoints on the walls.
Yes.
So if you are a trader, most traders need some form of electric.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had a rolling display on the wall. We had various bits and pieces.
Your stand is always very impressive, let me say.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll thank Mrs. B for that, because she's been here all day, and I've actually left her
I've a number of times wandered past your stand, and she's been sitting there manning your stand while you've been all, roving, reporters.
Engaging the people, and people walking past, catching her eye, she talks to them straight away.
Yeah.
It's really good. Really good.
And I think that's the right thing. I mean, yes, we do. We were wandering around talking to people and pressing the flesh and chatting to people we knew, but it's all part of the social event of getting people here.
That's one big thing that we always wanted to have or maintain with Hamzilla, isn't it? Is that it's a social event. It's a fundraising event for Dover Amateur Radio Club. But also we want it to be a social event. We want people to come from all over Kent, and people and from further away, just to kind of, meet with other radio amateurs and, have a nice chinwag and a face-to-face rag chew. So it's
what it's about.
So somebody said to me earlier, what is Hamzilla for? What's the prime objective of Hamzilla? And as Emily's quite rightly said, the club needs Hamzilla to make money. It costs us a couple of £1,000 a year for the hall. We've got 32 members, you do the math. Without Hamzilla, we wouldn't have any members because the subs would be too great, right? So that has to be the prime objective. But the most important thing about Hamzilla is the social service, if you like, that it offers to the hobby. It's about helping people buy things, helping people meet other people, and helping people sell things, and education. And it really, that's...
We've got a nice mix, actually, of people, personal sellers, selling their own stuff from, that they're clearing out their house or whatever, lofts and things. radio clubs and commercial sellers, it was kind of like, you know, 33% of each of those types of people here. So we had such a good mix of people, and I think that makes makes it really useful.
Absolutely.
And fun, and it makes it for great. Go on.
And what a coup. ICOM launched the IC905 at Hamzilla 2023. It's not been seen anywhere in the country before today.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome.
I couldn't afford one.
We were actually a little bit worried that we might not have enough space for all the people that might want to come and see it.
Well, in fairness, I noticed on your website that for traders you were sold out.
Yeah,
and that wasn't a lie.
No.
You know, that you probably could have squeezed in one or two at very, you couldn't have got any more in.
It's another thing with having a new venue is we didn't really know how much space we had. We had measured up, but we were a bit kind of nervous about how many tables we could actually fit in.
This room has got 4 giant fire exits down one side that we had to keep the tables clear of.
Yeah.
You know, it's not trivial.
So all in all, I think it was a success.
So do I.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%.
I think if they don't, and there you go. And you know, guys, going forward, you've got to put this one in your diary. Emily's told us the date, which you're going to do again.
17th of March, 2024.
17th of March 24. Because if you don't book up once it becomes available, you could miss out.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, the trader tables got booked up very quickly.
Yep.
So all that's left for me to do is thank you very, very much for this interview. Wish you all the best for next year.
Thank you very much.
And I'm looking forward to coming along and terrorising you again.
Excellent. Can't wait.
So thank you for supporting this event, and thank you for helping us with the publicity that you have. We're very grateful.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you. Ham Radio Network looks forward to seeing you at the Grand Wheelsborough Field Day.
Yeah.
On the whatever it is in July. Don't miss that one. And we'll also look forward to seeing you at Hamzilla next year. And thanks once again.
Thanks,
mutual. We enjoy doing it as much as you enjoy putting the rally on.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you
you'll
so
be
much.
doing another talk next year.
I will do that for you.
Thank you.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed our interviews there from the Hamzilla 2023 show. Great to see, I say that the 23 SEMS antenna that CCOM have developed is doing well in the market, and not only that, but great also to get a look at SDR Connect. There's been a lot of, I suppose, slightly negative thoughts around the world about how that may or may not happen, but as I say, we've actually seen it, and most importantly, if you'd like to see it too, you can pop along to our YouTube channel, so it's youtube.com/ICQ podcast, or check out the ICQ podcast page as well, where we'll have that video link there for you, and you can, check out what the video that we took off that product and that interview there with Andy from SDR Play. And also a lovely little interview with Emily and Jonathan. I thought you did that as well, where, as I say, just talking about some of the ideas and some of the planning and thoughts that goes into some of these shows. And hopefully, as always, I like those interviews because it gives everyone an opportunity and a flavour of the things to think about as they get these shows back up and running in our post-pandemic world.
Yeah, I agree with you, Colin. And in some ways, it's nice to find other people that don't always get an interview. Often the organisers get forgotten. You know, us amateurs turn up at a rally, we're looking for the bargains, we're rushing around headless chickens, we don't really appreciate all the other things go in. And I've also been known at other rallies to talk to the people who are doing the catering and those sort of things, because it does give you a flavour for what's going on. But I think, the interview with Emily and Jonathan is very light-hearted, but it's interesting, and it was great to see the pair of them after the rally had happened, the relief that they realised it had been a good rally. And, you know, from an organiser's point of view, you take all the risks and you hope that the risks are going to pay off in the long run, Colin. So, yeah. great. And we've been booked in for next year. And Emily caught me right at the end of the interview and said, of course, you will do another talk for us next year, won't you, Martin? So that looks like it's on the cards as well, Colin.
Yeah, you'll have to work on another batch of slides. And talking about talks, your talk we recorded of the setup and how we done the digital group in its overview method, we've recorded that. It's a bit of a chunk of video. It's going to take a little while to get it edited, but we will get that up in the next week or two as well. So you'll be able to, visit that video and see how that worked from there. So we'll let you know, guys, when that one's available too, but we'll get that working for you from there. Right, well, as I say, we've got a little bit of feedback this episode, and Andy Cowley, who's one of our monthly donors, commented on one of our previous episodes on the YouTube channel and said we've looked like the sun cycle that's coming up is going to be better than the 60s, as great as we think. We're able to work VK on 4 watts very easy from the UK. So Andy's 2E0 Romeo Echo. So thanks there for your comment. Interesting, Dad. The sun cycle came up the other day in a completely different conversation in my world, where the aurora, the northern lights, as I say, by all accounts, is also going to be a lot more visible with the sun cycle. So it was quite interesting how a conversation with someone that was talking about that interlinked with our hobby as well. So just a little side note about how things interlink into our hobby, etc. And as I say, by all accounts, it's not only going to be great for radio, but very great for seeing the northern lights, as I say, as that sun cycle comes around.
Yeah, the other good thing about it also, Colin, is, and nicely is, Frank and Mr. Dr. Scott McIntosh told us this was going to happen, and everybody else was poo-hooing them and saying, no, it ain't going to happen, it ain't going to happen. This is not how we see the prediction. And it looks very much like Dr. Scott McIntosh and Frank were dead right on this one. It is looking to say it's going to be a monstrous sunspot cycle this time round. And everybody seems to be enjoying HF, and let's hope it is as good as the 60s. But it's certainly looking to be a good one, Colin.
Exactly so. Well, we've got some thank yous to do as well. So we'd like to thank Winston Lyons, KD2 Whiskey Lima Lima 400 Club member. You can still got time to join that club membership for a special episode coming up in a couple of weekends' time. We celebrate 400 episodes of the ICQ podcast. We'd like to also thank Michael Rosenberg, N9 Yankee Bravo, and Gary Bridges, Whiskey Alpha Zero Victor, Mike Victor, for their one-off donations as well to the ICQ podcast. Your very kind donations and showing the value you find in the show, goes towards our running costs and keeping the show going for you. So we really do appreciate everything you do for us, and thinking of us, etc. So many thanks for looking after us there. We, of course, would like to thank CCOM, SDR Play, and Emily and Jonathan from the Dover Amateur Radio Club for taking part in our interviews from the Hamzilla 2023 show, and really hope you enjoy those as well. And, of course, our guys who joined us on the News Round Table. So we had Dan, Kilo Bravo 6, November Uniform, Caryn, KD2, Golf Uniform Tango, and Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf for, giving their opinion and views on the news that's going on in the amateur radio community. Right, well, I think that just about wraps up this episode, show number 399 of the ICQ podcast. I'm going to bid you a great day. I'm going to, send you off to make Mrs. B a cup of tea. And I wonder if she might have some of those Irish biscuits that I brought her over 2 weeks ago still to consume, or whether or not they're all gone and you've had to rush to the shops to buy some new ones.
Well, Colin, the Irish biscuits were devoured and she loved them. So that was a good one. But they have gone, so they went to a better place. But no. I will make your mum a cup of tea, and we'll find a biscuit for her. No problems at all. And Mrs. B, I think, enjoyed herself at Hamzilla. She's starting to enjoy going to some of the rallies with us because she starts to recognise some of you. Obviously, you guys in the States, unfortunately not. But some of it she recognises, and she chats to lots of people, and she's going to terrorise a number of people, I'm sure, when we take her to Free Eat Some, didn't she, Colin?
Very true, very true.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll go off and do that. So I'll say 73s, guys, and over to you, Colin.
Yeah, 73s all, and we'll catch up in a fortnight's time for episode 400. See you then, 73s.